Hey everyone, and welcome back to Promise of Life.
Which is where we do work, but actually this is Pro-Life Without Borders.
I'm so tired. Okay, so this is true facts. This is where the pro-life rubber hits the road. I'm gonna be honest with you. Jonathan does not sleep.
That's really unfortunate.
He is a year and a half old. We've had bad sleepers. Our fourth was a terrible sleeper, but I've never had a 1+ year-old child still wake up at night and need like a friend.
He's just
Lonely, sad, upset.
He's a true twin, I guess.
Missing something, and he wants his parents to arrive and be like, "It's okay, buddy, go back to sleep." And then he goes right back to sleep. But
that's so annoying.
It's so annoying.
Like, it's one thing. I mean, I'm not a parent, but I feel like it would be one thing to be woken up and like, oh, my child needs fed.
Right.
Or my child's in pain because he's teething.
Yeah.
Or something. But like for my child to wake me up in the middle of the night for literally no reason other than me being like, you're fine, I think I would also
It's not ideal.
be tired.
It's not. And like the thing is, he's probably slept through the night like 3 times his entire life.
Wow.
Yes. So it's not even like, oh,
that's not pro-life.
Because like some people,
that's not pro. Like we are pro-life for everyone here, including adults, including parents. And Jonathan is not.
Jonathan is not being very pro-life. So he, the problem, and like the doctor, I feel really bad saying this, but I asked the pediatrician. I was like, I don't know what to do. I'm not like a big cry it out person.
No,
like if they're just like fussing. Like kids like are like they're just like a little squawky or they're kind of rolling around like that's fine. Yeah, but I'm not gonna let them just scream and scream and scream. Like that's not happening.
Sad.
Yeah. So and I don't even know if it would work because I'm not gonna try it. We did try kind of like we're like, okay, I mean nothing else is working, and he didn't care. He just cried. So we just went and got him.
Yeah.
But the pediatrician was like, try Benadryl, and Anthony's like
I mean, I guess.
Anthony's like, I don't want to drug him, and I'm like,
it's not ideal.
It's like it was recommended by the pediatrician.
But also, like, don't you want to sleep?
Like, I'm not like I went on Google and Google was like try Benadryl. So he went and got like a more natural kind of like herbal thingy, and that was recommended by the chiropractor. And so we're trying that. I don't think it's working. I don't think he cares. I think
you just have to suck it up and get the actual name brand Benadryl.
Okay, so this is the problem. So I asked, because as you know, I'm in a group chat with his biological mom.
Right.
And then the other adoptive mom, and I was like, hey, like, how do your kids sleep? Like, maybe I'm like missing something.
Don't sleep.
No, they don't.
Oh, so it's genetic.
It's genetic.
Well, that's great.
Yes. And the bio mom is like, yeah, no, my kids really slept through till they were 3. 3.
No.
So that's why I welcomed you to Promise of Life Network, because
to be fair, we do work here.
We do.
So, like,
and we are here.
Mm-hmm. And they are here.
In spirit.
In spirit.
Welcome.
And in truth. And
in
whatever
something.
That
and probably in more sleep than I'm getting.
Probably.
So.
I slept pretty well, for what it's worth.
Thanks.
I got like a solid 7 hours. Well, I didn't sleep the night before, so.
Okay. Well, then you kind of have to.
Yeah.
So, now, I will say Anthony does most of the middle of the night stuff because Jonathan like will settle right back down for him. And for me, he's like, I'm sorry, shouldn't we be cuddling for the rest of the night?
Starting now. Which is cute, but like you have to sleep while you cuddle.
Yes. And he's not into that. Yeah, he's like, what if while you were sleeping, I was trying to fit my entire head into your eye socket? Like, what if we tried that?
Maybe he's desperate for sleep too.
So anyway, welcome back to the podcast. We are going to talk about everyone's favorite topic.
The election.
Okay, so the best part about the election, hands down, is there are no more ads. Yes.
Like it's done.
It is over. It is done. And I was 100% convinced. This is why I don't go into prophecy, because I would 100% be stoned. Like I can't tell the future. There's no way. So I was convinced that I would wake up Wednesday morning and it would be in question.
Yes.
Like I was very convinced. I thought there would be like flags on the field. There would be like, there's all this stuff happening. This side says, that side says, and like recounts here and there. And it was actually not.
No, it was, so I did stay up. I told myself I wasn't going to, because by the time the election actually came, I was tired of it. To the point where I almost didn't even care who won. Like, I just wanted it to be over so that I could move on and cope with, like, whatever it was I was going to have to cope with. But then the day came and I was like, I can't sleep. I have to stay up.
I went to sleep, but it's because Jonathan wakes up all the time, and so I was like,
right.
I can't lose
it's
sleep over this.
That you just can't lose, and I had sleep to lose. So
yes. Okay.
And I wasn't going to sleep anyway. Like, that's the thing, is I knew, like, I was struggling. So I stayed up. And that election, I mean, they obviously did not call it until Wednesday, but that election was fairly well decided by about 10 p.m. I think is whenever it was like, yeah, this is done.
Man, I could have made it till 10 p.m.
Yeah, you really could have. Like, it did not.
I was expecting like remember Gore and Bush? And like
no,
I don't. No, you don't.
I do remember. I actually was alive. I think was that the 2000?
I didn't vote in it.
Was that 2000?
I think so.
Yeah. So I was in kindergarten.
Okay.
Like, not to age myself, but I do remember this election.
Okay.
But I don't understand. Like, I didn't understand obviously anything about it, and the only reason I remember is because I was in public school for kindergarten for like one semester, and my school held an election to like we were, because it was election season, and so they were like trying to teach like age appropriate, like talking about
who'd you vote for.
Well, here's the deal, I voted for myself. I didn't like fully understand the instructions, I don't think, and also like
so it was like Gore got votes, Mikayla got votes, Bush got.
And I don't even remember like who the candidates were, because I don't think we were actually holding like do you want to vote for Gore or for Bush? Because like that would be wild for kindergarten. But also, I mean, I was a smart little kid, but like my writing skills weren't super great. So like, what could I confidently write?
Your name. Yep, kindergarten. That's all you've got.
Yeah.
So I remember the election. I could not vote. I was a teenager. I went through a season as a teenager, like right after I became very strongly pro-life and wanted to run a pregnancy center or a maternity home or whatever. I really got into politics for like a season. Okay. And I read tons of like, my dad had the Conservative Chronicle, which was this paper that came out, and you could like read like Walter Williams and Phyllis Schlafly, and like I loved all of those articles, and I read all those articles, and so obviously it was like a big topic in our house. And so it was Florida was in question, and that was going to decide the entire election. And so there was all these like recounts, and there were like hanging chads and dimpled chads, and like what counts as a vote. And like we had a neighbor named Chad, and so he was over. Like, if you think you're over an election, try being named Chad when that's what everyone is talking about.
Sure.
He was ready to like move out of the country. Like, it was so bad. So I was expecting like that. Like, I was expecting it to be this giant, drawn out, crazy.
No.
And it wasn't. It wasn't. It was like we woke up and it was very like, it was very much like a definitive victory.
Yeah. And I will say, for what it's worth, obviously I'm pleased with the way the election came out.
As am I. And we're allowed to feel pleased.
Yes, and so I'm pleased. But I will give it to them that it was a very peaceful concession. Yeah. And like reasonably gracious. I listened to the concession speech, and I was impressed. Yeah. With the concession.
Which it's hard to lose well.
It is. And I think she lost well, and I will give her that much. Like, I think like it was a very gracious concession, and I was a little worried that it might not be that way.
Yes. Yeah, that there would be bitterness or anger.
Anyway around. Like, that it was going to be a bitter mess. And so I was very pleased that it was not a bitter mess. Yep. The Pennsylvania senator, on the other hand, that is officially in recount. So
it was a very close.
It is. So I was reading about it because I thought they had called it, and they did call it, and then they were like,
uncalled it.
They like rescinded it because it's within, I think they said 0.5%. Yes. And so if it's that close in Pennsylvania, it triggers an automatic recount.
It's wild how close it is. Yeah. Like, I mean, when we say every vote counts, like legitimately, like if you got a flat tire on the way and didn't vote, you may have just lost the Senate or the election. Yeah. Like, it's that close.
Yes. So that is still to be determined. TBD. TBD, because I thought maybe that it was called, and then they were like, it's too close, we're going to recount. Right. And I do think that McCormick will. I think so.
Will win, because he was the original, like, he had enough votes, and I have a feeling he'll win. And maybe he won't, I don't know, but
I think, like, I'm confident in and how things were run in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, it was a very careful, like it was very monitored. It was very oversaw. So the election was good. The results were definitive, which I think is very healthy.
Yes.
What is not healthy is some of the reactions to the election. So there's sort of a healthy way, as we talked about, a good gracious way to lose and a gracious way to win. And then there are unhealthy and ungracious, if ungracious is a word, ways to lose and win. And the thing is, okay, so politics are important.
Yes.
Voting is important.
Mm-hmm.
However, you can't tie it to your sense of emotional, social, and mental well-being. Like if we had let's say Trump had lost and Kamala Harris had won, I would have been kind of bummy.
Oh, I would have been in a bad mood.
Yeah, for like a day.
In a straight up bad mood on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then I would have just moved on.
Right. And because you have to.
And you have to.
And I can say that because when Trump lost to Biden, we were kind of cranky and then we moved on. And when who ran against Obama?
Oh, Mitt Romney.
Romney lost to Obama. We were kind of in a bad mood and we moved on. Yeah. And so we know that we've had elections where we were like, oh, we don't really agree with the results. We wish the other guy had won or other person had won. And we got over it.
Right. And I can already anticipate some people's pushback and saying, well, we can't just move on because our rights are being taken away.
But they're not.
And we addressed this in previous podcast episodes, but that rhetoric is still out there. And I do want to say that it's important to acknowledge that the fear, and it's mostly women, that they are posting about on social media, that fear that they have, I don't doubt is real to them.
Absolutely.
Like they are legitimately afraid. And so I don't think they're faking fear. I don't think they're trying to play up like this. I think people are legitimately afraid.
Which actually makes it worse.
Which is even worse.
Yes. And so the thing is, we have people out there, women mostly, but also some men, who legitimately believe that we are going to start a dictatorship, that slavery will be reenacted, that women will no longer be able to drive or hold bank accounts or vote or hold jobs, that women will not be able to make decisions without their husbands or fathers. I think the Handmaid's Tale's uniforms are mostly jokes.
I have no idea. Honest, I'm not gonna lie. Like I've lost
stuff
track of that plot
some stuff that I thought was satire was not satire, and I was like, oh, that's really, oh no, someone really thinks that.
I've lost track of whatever that plot is. I'm just like tired of seeing it. Like, they're ugly.
That women are like enslaved now. I mean, and there was even, and this is when I really was like, this is unhinged. Like this is deeply concerning. There's a trend going around on TikTok where women are saying now that Trump is the president, we have to learn how to use poison to get rid of the men in our lives.
Well,
and so people are on TikTok mixing what I'm assuming is poison.
That is very poor coping mechanism.
Murder?
Yeah, I would say that's murder.
And I'm frankly very uncomfortable with women or anyone poisoning
anyone else.
Anyone.
Like, it's just not.
So this idea that like now that Trump is president, we will lose all of our rights to the point where our only defense is to poison people.
Yeah, that's special.
It's so concerning. And because I think the thing that's concerning is that it's a genuine fear.
Right. Like they're legitimate about this. Like it's not just a show that they're putting on to make a point. Like they're legitimately afraid.
Yes.
And it doesn't have to be that way. It should have never been this way.
Right.
And it's frustrating.
It is. And the thing is, like, our country was founded in such a way that we would not become a dictatorship because, like, they tried to make George Washington king.
Right.
And he was like, no.
He was like, buddy, like,
this is like the whole point. He's like, you guys have missed the point. We don't want a king. Like, we don't want to have taxation without representation. We want to have representation from all areas of our new nation. And they founded this kind of new thing. Now, I realize that they based it on, like, Rome. And there was like the Magna Carta and like there's other things that led to it. Like I realize it wasn't like brand new, but they kind of made this new thing. And so our government is built in such a way that even if your party loses, all is not lost.
Right.
And things can be overcome, things can be managed, you can still like lobby for things that are important to you. You still have power as a voter, as a constituent, as a citizen. And so things may happen that you don't agree with, but it's not going to be this kind of like takeover.
No, and even if that were the case, which it's not, we have term limits for presidencies
Right.
in America. So he's not going to be president forever. He's going to be president for 4 years, and then he's done forever because you can only serve 2 terms.
And he's going to be 84.
And he's going to be 84. Do they age out?
No, but I feel like eventually you're going to age out of life.
Well, I kind of like wondering about that because I was like,
I mean, how even if, let's say we didn't have term limits, which obviously we do, but if we didn't, I'm not even sure how much longer a man his age could consider himself. Like, I mean, how many more terms could he possibly, like, even if, like, let's say we elected him to be the king of America,
right?
Like he's older. And I'm like, I'm not saying that, like, I want someone to die or whatever, like, obviously not. But like people,
it is something that they tend to do,
right? People age and eventually pass. And so I feel like even like looking, at it that from that angle, like there's no way he's setting up like some multi-generational dictatorship. Like it's not even possible.
What I've learned is that people have an unprecedented, there's the word, amount of faith in the efficiency of the government.
Oh gosh, it's terrible. I was actually talking about that at lunch today.
Yeah, and I'm kind of like, have
you met the government?
Well, it just tells me that some people have not had to go to the DMV for a while, and that their driver's license are probably up for renewal coming up here soon, because it's been a while, clearly, since you've been to the DMV. If you're like, the government's going to do all of these things in 4 years, they're not.
They're not that fast. They're just not.
Like, it took 3 years for the government to agree that my nephew is a citizen, and he was born to an American. Like, it was very clear. And it still took 3 years.
Yes. Like, and an interview with a 3-year-old.
Yeah. Which went about as well as you would think it would.
But okay, so Mikayla is unique.
Thank you. That's what my mom tells me.
She's so right. In many ways, but one of them is that you are pursuing a doctorate in rhetoric.
Yes.
And so I actually was talking to a friend of mine, and when she's actually thinking about starting her podcast back up, and I told her when she does, we should have her do a guest spot for us. But her name is Janine. She's super smart, and we went to college together. And she was talking about how she had noticed, because she does a lot of marketing, that a lot of the marketing in the election was targeted in such a way to sort of play on the fears of people who are neurodivergent, or struggle with mental health, or struggle with fear and anxiety, which I know is also part of mental health. So I would like you to use your education and explain to me, who does not have an education in that, like, what does that mean? And how does someone or anyone like target a specific group like that?
Sure. So when we talk about rhetoric, right, I'm trained, it sounds so fancy, like I just went to school, but like I'm trained. And
you're with
like,
my bow sweater,
and like I don't know what this pigtail is doing, but like I keep twisting it because I'm like, what is this?
They're cute.
Thanks.
It's Wild West Week.
Yes, it's Wild West Week. So rhetoric, in an Aristotelian sense, which is what I studied, is just understanding. I love how there's
options.
There's so many definitions of rhetoric. Like we have to define rhetoric, and people use that word as like this nasty thing. Like, well, the rhetoric and the rhetoric, and you're like, it's literally just a word.
Stop saying it like that.
Calm down. It's understanding the different ways that a person can be persuaded.
Okay.
So that's what we're talking about. Now, Aristotle thinks that there's 3 modes of persuasion, right? Ethos, pathos, logos. You can persuade someone based on credibility. So you should believe me because I'm working on a doctorate in rhetoric. You could persuade someone just purely on logic. Really great for engineers. They love logic. So A plus B must equal C, ergo. Or you could persuade people based on emotion. And that is what we saw in this election. There was no logic involved. There was no credibility involved. It was purely rhetoric based on emotion. So they are trying to persuade people using essentially emotional attacks. And I'd like to point out, it's not a bad thing to know how to persuade someone, right? Like we need to persuade people every single day. We have to persuade someone for something.
Mm-hmm.
So this is not a bad thing to know how to do. But if you have malicious intent, or if you're persuading people to something that is not healthy for them, now we have a problem.
Right.
And so that's like ethics. That's a whole different. I don't study ethics.
I can make a joke there, but I won't.
So we saw a lot of persuasion based on emotions. And so they're appealing to people who tend to make decisions with their feelings.
Mm-hmm.
And I think all human beings are capable of doing that, right? Like we all struggle with, well, I feel this way, ergo I must.
Right.
But women particularly are prone to making that kind of decision. Because just hormonal things going on. I think we were built that way.
Right.
We tend to have more empathy. And people who are neurodivergent tend to struggle with emotional regulation. And so they are prone to making decisions from emotion because they struggle to emotionally regulate. People who have autism, people who have ADHD, things like that. And then you have people who suffer from mental illness are also going to make decisions on emotion because there is a lot going on. And for whatever reason, it could be emotional, it could be something neurological, chemical imbalance, whatever the case is that's causing the mental illness, they're going to be prone to making decisions based off of emotions as well. So that's what we saw in, I think, the election this year was a lot of campaigning towards emotional people.
So if you are an emotional person, a woman, someone who struggles with mental health, anxiety, someone who is afraid, someone who is neurodivergent, and you're hearing things like families are going to be broken up, dictatorship is going to ensue, interracial marriages are going to be dissolved,
women are going to die.
Women are going to die. You become very, very, very fearful. And then when the person that you were told is going to cause all of this is elected, what happens? Like, what is happening inside of them? Do you think?
They're just, I mean, so for essentially 4 years, they've been told if this happens, these are all of the ramifications. And I think we're seeing the buildup of that. For 4 years, that's what people have been told. And now here it is. Here's the moment. And so I think it's 4 years of fear coming out all at once. That's been instilled. And then they're also probably thinking ahead because some people struggle with things like paranoia. Or as someone who tends to be anxious, I'm always 2 steps ahead.
Right.
And so they're also taking on all of that anxiety from not only what they've been hearing the past 4 years, which is causing anxiety, but they're now looking forward 4 years and making assumptions about how things are going to be based on the rhetoric that they've heard.
Right. And I think too, there's, as kids and even adults, we think about like the dictators of the past, Adolf Hitler, Mussolini, even like the Ottoman Empire. I mean, some of the places where like really cruel individuals were in charge and people really suffered. And we think, you know, I would have changed it. Like if I was there, if I was in Germany, if I was in Italy, if I was in Russia, if I was in Turkey, if I was in the Aztec Empire, like I would have stopped it. And so I think when you're looking at something and you're thinking, oh, I'm being told like this is the next Hitler, like this is the next dictator, this is the next oppressor, you know, and feeling like I can't stop it, like that probably feels really scary and really overwhelming. And I'm not trying to infantilize anyone or make someone think, oh, you're saying I'm stupid and you're saying I can't think for myself. That's not true.
No,
but the reality is there are people who have studied how to persuade us, and that's marketing, right?
Yeah.
And so they've learned what words to say, what words not to say, what images to use, what colors to use, and it's not right. It's just not right.
No, not in the context of like what we're talking about.
Right.
And like I said, like these things happen every day. And I think it's okay to acknowledge that, right? Like we just finished repainting all of our downstairs.
Right.
space. And so those color choices were intentional.
Right.
We do not have black walls downstairs. We do not have like
We don't even have stark white walls.
no, we don't have stark colors at all, because stark colors tend to induce anxiety. They can induce panic in some cases, right? So we have soft colors because we don't want people to, like, people are already anxious when they're in our clinic, and so we don't want them to continue that. So it's okay to acknowledge, because people like to say like, "Wow, rhetoric, rah, it's all marketing." Like it's okay, but this rhetoric is actually harming people, and that's the problem.
Right. And if you're saying, okay, I want to sell my widget, and people trust the color blue, and people love to be outdoors, so I'm going to film something of my widget being used outdoors, and the lady holding it is going to be wearing blue because people trust blue. Okay, whatever. You can be hardy enough intellectually to buy or not buy the widget based on your need for it or interest in it. But when someone is saying, okay, I want to win an election, and this is not a particular party, this could be either party. If someone is saying, I want to win an election and I'm willing to play on the fears of people to an extreme to do it, that's problematic.
No, it is, because we have people making decisions off of that, right? And not just, I'm not even talking about elections and voting and like making decisions about who to vote for, but like women are making decisions for their own bodies based on, you know, this rhetoric that's
this fear.
used. And
there are people who are buying pregnancy tests in bulk because they're afraid that if they buy a pregnancy test in January or for the next 4 years that someone's going to track it. Women are shaving their heads.
I don't understand that one. It's giving Britney.
I don't really understand.
I don't understand it.
I'm not shaving my head.
Some of them look really good. I could never.
I could never.
I know for a fact I would not look good with a shaved head.
And I don't care who wins or loses an election. I'm keeping my hair.
Yeah,
it's staying firmly affixed to my noggin.
I need it.
Yes.
My head's shaped weird.
People are, and this is concerning, bulk buying abortion pills.
Yes.
So first of all, it's concerning because now you have a box of abortion pills sitting at your house for like that I'm guessing you're planning on using if you become pregnant. But then the other thing is, okay, now you have this giant box of drugs, medicine, chemicals. You know, they don't last forever. No. You know, as someone who's definitely tried to use expired Tylenol for a headache, it doesn't work.
Yeah, it becomes less effective.
It becomes less effective over time if you don't store it correctly, if it gets wet, if it gets too warm, if it gets too cold. I mean, I don't know specifically about abortion pills, but I know medicine has to be stored in a certain way.
Right. And I have seen people on my own accounts talk about things like Plan B has like a 5-year expiration date, and like, hey ladies, like I'm not telling you what to do, but just know that like mifepristone doesn't expire, which is
garbage.
Not true.
If Twinkies expire, mifepristone expires. like come on.
Like everything has an expiration date.
Yes.
Everything.
So women are spending money, possibly money they don't have,
right,
to stockpile pregnancy tests, ovulation prediction kits, condoms, abortion pills, Plan B, whatever. There was one post, I'm sorry, the pregnancy tracking app. I know we've talked about this before. That had said if you have a period tracking app, delete it. If you are a person with a uterus, because they can't say women. And then they said if you are a person who doesn't have a uterus, i.e. a man, they said, or someone who had a hysterectomy, I guess, but men, they said download the app and like put random data in to confuse them. Right. And I'm like, who are we confusing? No one's looking at your data. No one.
No one.
I'm not even looking at my data.
That's what I'm like. I'm not even looking at it really because I have no consequences going on right now.
Right.
Like, so I got a notification today about something from like the tracker app that I like never remember to use.
Yes.
And this is probably like way too much information. People are like, we don't care. But
right. You're going to hear about it.
You should, because the media is putting this kind of stuff out.
Yes.
And so you have to sit and listen to it, because as a woman for 4 years, I've been hearing it like delete your tracking app.
Yeah.
Like delete it. I don't even pay attention to that thing.
Yeah. Nobody else is paying attention to it.
I'm like just swiping the notification away, like things for nothing. And the information it provided was not helpful or relevant to my current stage of life. And so I was just swiping it away.
Yes.
So I promise you that JD Vance does not care about.
He doesn't. He probably doesn't even know what his wife's app
is doing. My period app doesn't even know what it's doing sometimes. That thing is always glitching.
So women are concerned about that. I saw posts from people that are like their country said they hate them because they're a person of color, or they're a person who identifies as homosexual, or they're a person who identifies as trans. People are afraid of just numerous things. 99% of them they should not be afraid of. And so there's this ginormous, which is not a word, this giant swell of anxiety, and it's causing people to act out in really, really concerning ways.
Yeah. And I think I've been frustrated because I've seen a lot of people who are trying to keep the peace, and people who I really don't know how they voted or if they voted at all.
Right, because voting is private.
Yeah. So I could see whether someone voted or not, can't see which way they voted.
Right.
And also I don't have time to be looking up that stuff.
It's not really my business.
It's not really my business. I don't care. So I see people who are trying to keep the peace, and they're like, listen, just because we voted differently doesn't mean that we can't be friends. I think we can have respectful conversations. And there are people who are saying, nope, like, we can't be friends if you voted differently, because your vote said, essentially what you said was, you're fine with me dying.
Yes.
You hate me. You dehumanized me. I had friends who unfriended me the day of the election, and
which is interesting because your vote was the same regardless.
It's the same regardless,
but also, they only defriended you because their candidate lost.
Right. And for what it's worth, I did not publicly post anything about my preferred candidate.
Mm-hmm. I did, but it was minimal. And everyone does.
Right. I mean, that's the thing, is I think people know that I'm pro-life, and I am very openly pro-life, and so you can make reasonable assumptions based on that. But it wasn't like I posted something and it made them mad and they left. They literally came, found me, and unfriended me.
You don't even post that much.
I don't even post.
It was like Bojangles was like the last thing. He's so cute. You should put a picture of him if you're watching this.
Bojangles is gonna be right
Bojangles. He's so cute.
He's so cute.
So that's happening. The other thing that I'm really concerned about is a Yale psychiatrist came out and said that for people's mental health, they need to go no contact with any family member that voted for Trump.
Yes.
So there's a couple things that I don't love about that. First of all, you need to be able to love your family regardless of their political affiliation. Like, there are 5,000 other things you can talk about at Thanksgiving and Christmas besides politics.
And there's dangers when you put yourselves in silos.
Yes.
And that's what we're seeing. A lot of people who are incapable of handling a different opinion becoming silos. You
get into an echo chamber.
Right.
And then you don't ever hear another opinion, another thought. You think, oh, no one that is reasonable carries the opposite view, because you've cut off everyone who carries the opposite view. The other thing, other than just the basics of you shouldn't cut your family off because of politics, is that this is my concern from like a person who cares for others, a person who cares for young people, is that typically these are going to be generational decisions. So mom and dad voted for Trump. Kids are like, I'm not talking to you anymore. Uncle Ralph votes for Trump. Kids are like, we're not talking to you anymore. And so those are the more stable people in their life. They're the next generation up. They're the people we're supposed to lean on for advice about like how to get wine out of carpet, what to do when your check engine light comes on. Maybe if you don't agree with them politically, you don't get political advice from them, but you can get basic life advice from them. They provide a sense of stability for us. So we have individuals who are full of anxiety. They're full of fear. They're full of, frankly, terror. Some people are trying to leave the country. And now they're being told that for their mental health, they have to cut off the people who are probably the most stabilizing influence in their life.
Right.
That's not good.
No. And I understand that there are some cases where it is beneficial and necessary to cut someone.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Like that's not what we're saying. So if you're someone who's had to go no contact with a family member or set very strong boundaries with a family member, like, do recognize that there are times and places for that.
We're just saying the election is, if that's the only thing.
Well, the thing is, and it's so frustrating because I've had people who's like, cut toxic people out of your life. Everyone is toxic.
Yes, to a certain extent.
Like, all have sinned and fallen short. You can make anyone toxic if you look hard enough.
Yep.
And I think some people are looking.
Yes.
And if you look, you're going to find something. And going no contact is not usually the
Well,
answer.
it's also very trendy right now, and anything that's trendy makes me nervous, because are people doing it because they've tried every other option, they've exhausted every other option, and this is their only choice, or are they doing it because Grandma Matilda gave the baby a lollipop and they didn't want her to give the baby a lollipop, and now they won't talk to Grandma Matilda ever?
And it has consequences, like generational, like you were saying.
Yeah.
And so we're destabilizing what could potentially be the only stability that a person has when we're encouraging them to cut people off over something like the election.
Like an election. So it's so important to realize, first of all, a lot of the fear mongering that's going on, the women are going to die, we're going to have a dictatorship, women have to wear red costumes with white hats, women can't drive.
I think the Red Hat Society is something different.
Oh, my grandma was she was a red hat.
I don't know what the Red Hat Society is.
It's just old ladies wearing red hats. It was actually a good time. Like, you would have been a red hat member.
Well, that's what I was like. Kind of like, that sounds like a
They all wore purple dresses and red hats. Yeah, it was gorgeous. I got my grandma a feather boa for hers, and she wore it to all of the red hat.
Can we bring it back? I'm going to look it up and watch me have to edit all of this out, because it turns out the Red Hat Society is something really bonkers.
No, I don't think it is.
I think it was just old ladies.
I think it's just old ladies. Fly. Yeah, and we should bring it back when we get old. We're gonna do that.
I'm gonna do it.
We're gonna
bust out the feather boas.
The feather boas. Okay, so we're not gonna have to wear red costumes and white hats. We're not losing our ability to bank. We're not losing our ability to bring a charge against someone who's violent.
Vote. Like, we could still vote.
We still have custody of our children. Like, nothing.
We still have a driver's license.
Well, you did lose it.
I lost it, but that was on me. And, like, I could have renewed it.
And by lost it, we meant, like, physically. She did not lose it, it legally.
She just couldn't find it somewhere,
but you did find it, and you have it now. So if you are someone who is very anxious because of the election results, I'm going to encourage you, number one, get off of social media.
Oh my goodness.
As soon as you finish this. No, I'm just kidding. Get off of social media, all of it.
Every
single thing. Do it. Go for a walk.
Touch
grass. And I know that's, like, some people use that as, like, something that's kind of like, man, touch grass. But, like, seriously, go outside. Go for a hike. Go for a walk. If you have a dog, walk your dog. If you don't have a dog, walk someone else's dog. Put your cat on a leash.
Put him in his little bubble backpack.
Something. Get outside and recenter yourself.
Breathe fresh air.
Yeah, breathe some fresh air. Read a book that is not political.
Yeah, that's my problem. It's like, I'm like, oh, I'll read. And then they're like, Mikayla.
That's not helping. Read a book that's not political.
Truth and method is not light reading.
Read a light book that's not political.
Something fun.
Go out with your friends and say, this is a politics-free zone. We're not talking about politics. And it's not that you're turning your head away. You're not ignoring it. You're giving yourself space and boundaries, and you're giving yourself some room to breathe, and that's healthy. Go to your parents for Thanksgiving. Even if they voted for Trump, let your dad sit in his New Balance sneakers and his socks up to his knees and talk about the grass and talk about the neighbor and eat the turkey and watch the football.
Here's the thing.
And just have a good time.
Go to your parents' house for Thanksgiving if they voted for Harris.
Yes, because it goes both ways. And I think I typically see it on the other side. But you're right. If you are a Trump fan and you voted for Trump and your parents voted for Harris.
Listen, there's certainly sore losers, and we're seeing some sore losers, and there are sore winners.
There are really bad winners.
There are really sore winners, and it is gross, and it is giving a bad name for a bunch of people who don't feel that way.
And, like, it's okay to say, hey, I'm really happy that we won.
It is. You were allowed to be happy.
And I'll be honest, I have posted some things that are making fun of some of the ridiculousness.
And I think
I would make fun of that either way.
You could make fun of ridiculous things. Like, ridiculous things are ridiculous.
Yes, and they deserve to be made fun of. But I'm not making fun of people who are genuinely afraid. And I'm trying to engage those people in conversation. That being said, I'm going to my in-laws for Christmas and Thanksgiving. And while my in-laws and my, like, immediate family are very much aligned with me politically and religiously and theologically, the extended family is not. And so we just don't talk about it.
Yeah.
It's okay to not talk about it.
Political discussion over Thanksgiving.
Right. And if someone tries to engage you, just say, hey, I would rather not. Let's just have turkey.
It's okay to just have a good time.
Yeah. So get some space, take a breath, touch some grass, read a book, watch a TV show, go to your moms and dads, go to your sisters, make nice for Christmas and Thanksgiving, and it's going to be okay. Come January, it will be okay. And if it's not okay, then we have to trust that God is in control, our government to do what the founding fathers intended it to do, which is to provide checks and balances, And I can personally guarantee you that if something crazy does happen, those of us who voted in a way that maybe you don't agree with are not going to sit down and just say, well, whatever.
No.
Like, no one is going to sit back and say, oh, well, slavery, sure, that's fine.
We're all responsible for holding people accountable.
Yes.
That's what makes us a democracy.
Yes. And so actually, I actually talked to someone who was very upset about the way the election went. And she was like, well, I need to hear that you're going to stand with me if this stuff happens. And I was like, of course. Like,
slavery wasn't cool then and it's not cool now.
No, and I want to drive and
I like voting. It was fun.
Be on a bank account and have custody of my children, and I don't like to wear giant white hats. So I'm not doing any of that.
I could rock a giant white
They're
hat.
like, the problem is they're like really like around, and so like you can't turn your head. You have to turn your entire body. And I'm 37 now, and my back is like stiff.
They're blinders, which is ironic. But...
irony. So, what's the Jesus moment of today? Who's in charge?
Not me, thank goodness.
God is sovereign.
I think everyone was just like, praise the Lord.
God is sovereign. Yes. And I would encourage you, if you are really upset about this election, read the Old Testament and look at the kings that God put in power and realize they are so much worse than anything we are facing.
Well, and that's the thing,
this moment.
Is I saw a really powerful Instagram post that was like, the president is adulterous and he's slanderous and he's done all these terrible things and he's had children out of wedlock and blah, blah, blah. And then, I think it was a reel, I don't know. And then the next thing was like, I'm talking about King David.
Yeah.
And I was just like, dang, you got me. You had me in the first half.
Yeah.
Even though the election went my way, I was still kind of like, meh. And so it's just like, good things can come from bad people.
Mm-hmm.
Good things come from bad people all of the time.
And Mikayla and I both have a very strong sense of God's sovereignty. Yeah. And while I did vote, and I think voting is important, and I prayed about my vote, and I prayed about what God wanted me to do, I also believe that regardless, God's will was going to be done.
Yeah.
We don't change what God wants done. And I would be saying that no matter who won. And
that's the thing, is like, would it be more difficult to say that had the election not gone the way that I wanted it to? Yeah, but it's still true.
Mm-hmm. And I remember 4 years ago when the election did not go the way I wanted it to, I gave myself 24 hours to crab.
Yeah.
And then I put my big girl panties on and I went on with my life.
Yeah. And we've made it. Here we are 4 years later.
Mm-hmm. And we will be here in 4 years.
Yeah.
So take a break.
And if we're not, that was God's will.
That was God's will.
Fine.
So rest in God's sovereignty, take a break,
Touch
and
grass.
we'll see you next week.